So here we are ready to start our project. Working with pastels through a stencil is not an exact science. So you'll see I picked out 3 or 4 colors that I'm planning to use, and I picked out a stencil that has lots of little nooks and crannies all kind of together. The secret to this particular technique is to have your stencil be something with a lot of pattern to it and not a lot of empty space. So here I'm just taking the pastel through the little parts of the florals. I will say I do enjoy doing the florals most with this technique. And I will continue doing that until all the areas are filled in that particular section. At some point, I will pick up the stencil and put it down again and add more florals around it to build a pattern on this particular 6x6 piece of watercolor paper. Use care when picking up your stencil. The beauty of pastels are that they're so vibrant. They're so vibrant because they have very, very little binder. So that powder is actually sitting on top of your watercolor paper. If you pick it up carefully and place it carefully, you'll be able to move the stencil as needed. Once liquefied with the next part of the process, these pastels will become permanent. This is where we become painterly. I'm going to use a combination of clear gesso, and it can be any kind. And then I'm also going to use a white gouache. I happen to have the Liquitex brand here, but any white gouache would do. The gesso, when it dries, it is clear, so I'm going to use that more on some of the leaves and maybe a couple parts of the darker shadow color in the petals. And then the white gouache I'm going to use for a majority of the petals. So this will take them a little bit more pastel. The darker blue will retain some of its quality, but it'll go almost to a mid-tone blue. So now you see me, I have a flat brush, and I am just going to sit and basically paint with the powders that are there. There's not a lot of thought that goes into it. I do not clean my brush very often. Sometimes I will wipe it off on a paper towel. And as I said, in some of my other projects, I get into a Zen-like state, and this is one of those where I do several pieces of paper at one point and then just sit and enjoy the painting process where I don't have to think about composition. I'm going to speed this up, and then I'll come back and talk to you about other possibilities. Don't be afraid to go back and add more pastel. It's easily done. I'm actually doing this wet into wet, so I didn't let everything dry. You can always rub off the paint off of your pastel. I do that sometimes to accentuate areas that I want more shadowing in. Once in a while I do it to add a little bit more brightness. But don't hesitate to keep playing with this. As you can see, I'm building up some really, or some thicker layers, not super thick. That's going to change what I do next. I'm going to actually add, spot add some white acrylic that will be thicker than either the gouache or the gesso. And that is to have a slightly more impasto effect.